This is the Daily Night for Friday, April 15, 2016. The Daily Night supports Making Biscuits Cat Rescue, a 501c3 charity. If you like this podcast, please consider making a donation or adopting a rescue cat at makingbiscuits.org. I'm your host, Gerardo San Diego, and today I'm going to talk about my all-time favorite superhero movies, the top 10. My friends and I, the Geek Friends, are compiling a list of our favorite top 10 superhero movies that we're going to post on a future podcast. I will tell you about that when it's on the air. It's on the internet. But for now, I'm going to talk about my personal top 10 favorite. Let me adjust the mic stand. Okay, so most of us pretty much know that there's going to be a Captain America Civil War movie coming out in a couple of weeks. And chances are it's going to be one of the top 10 movies of everybody's list. From what I've heard about it, it's ridiculously well received. So I figured, let me think about my favorite superhero movies from before, because chances are one of these are going to get bumped off the list as soon as I see Captain America Civil War. So I don't know how, because I have Deadpool at number 10. So what? I don't want to get rid of Deadpool at number 10. Okay, all right, so let me check my levels. Okay, we're good. We're recording. Here is my, in case you haven't already read it from the podcast or the webpage, thedailynight.net, thedailynight with a K.net. Here is the list of my top 10 all-time favorite superhero movies. Number 1 is Spider-Man 2 from 2004. That's the Sam Raimi directed Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire and with Dr. Octopus, what's his name? Alfred Molina. And number 2 is The Dark Knight with Christian Bale and, of course, the immortal, dare I say, beloved Heath Ledger. Number 3, The Avengers, the first movie that put everything together and did it right. So, number 4, Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Number 5, Iron Man, the original Iron Man with Robert Downey Jr. Number 6 is Batman Begins. Yes, I have 2 of the 3 Christopher Nolan Batman movies in my top 10. Yes, Batman pretty much tied with Wolverine is my favorite superhero. So, number 7, X-Men Days of Future Past. Number 8, Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 9, Superman from 1978, the movie that, for me at least, started it all. And number 10, Deadpool. Man, I really don't know how I'm going to kick any of these from the top 10 list when Captain America Civil War comes out. I don't. Okay, so basically this is why this is my top 10 list. Now, as you can tell from my top 10 list, I don't have The Crow. I don't have The Incredibles. I don't have what else? The more cutting edge stuff. You could even say Conan the Barbarian is a superhero, right? And they've made movies with that. But for the most part, I'm more mainstream. I'm not, cutting edge or, just my taste. And anybody who has any top 10 lists that are different from mine, I have no problem agreeing with them or accepting their list, because as I've been saying over and over again with all these podcasts before, and I tell anybody I talk to, we are spoiled now with superhero movies, with superheroes basically. The comic books, knock on wood, there's a resurgence in comic books, and comic book stores are coming back to life. Hopefully it'll maintain that. Even TV now. Now we have comic book TV shows that are as good, if not better, than the ones in the movies. Case in point, the Netflix TV shows, the Netflix movies. And I didn't include Daredevil, even though Daredevil is easily in my top, I'd say probably top 5. Just so I don't go crazy trying to confuse what genre with what. Those of you who listen to my podcast know I adore Daredevil, both seasons 1 and 2, and whatever else they're going to throw at us in the future. And no, it doesn't belong to a category on its own. But just for the sake of argument, I'm going to leave it off my top 10 movie favorites. But know that Daredevil is up there in terms of what I love to watch. To me, Daredevil is like a 13-hour movie. Season 1 is Daredevil 1, a 13-hour movie, and Season 2 is the sequel to Daredevil 1. So, all right, let's get on with it. I'm gonna go from number 1 to 10. I'm gonna do, usually people go from the least favorite to the most favorite. I'm gonna go from 1 to 10 in case I run out of steam toward the end, and I kind of gloss over the bottom of the list. It's not really the bottom of the list because any given day, I can prefer any of these movies over any of the other ones, and regardless, like I could have a totally Deadpool kind of day, and to me on that day, Deadpool is my number 1 movie, and so here we go. Spider-Man 2, the Sam Raimi from 2004, where Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is having doubts about his what he wants to do in life and whether he still has his powers, and is it psychological. So he hangs up his costume, but as soon as he hangs up his costume, Dr. Octopus comes along. Alfred Molina, brilliant, easily one of the top 5 supervillains in all of the superhero comic book movies ever made. I mentioned this in another podcast. I saw this with a friend, both of us guys, both of us pretty much grown men, and at least 2, maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times in the movie, both of us were crying. Trying not to show it, but we were weeping. The scenes with Aunt May, her speech in the backyard, Dr. Octopus, when he regains control of himself and becomes the good man again. Oh my God, that scene! It's basically Dr. Octopus's redemption. He takes control of his arms, his mechanical arms, and decides to save, or at least undo the damage that he brought. To me, Spider-Man 2 is a near perfect, if not perfect, superhero movie. And at least at that time in my life was one of the most accurate in terms of what Peter Parker was in high school. I have heard the new Spider-Man is even more faithful to the comic book Spider-Man. But let's see what's going to happen there. But it's still near and dear to my heart, Spider-Man 2, especially with the train action scene with Dr. Octopus. And, if you've seen the movie, hopefully you've seen the movie, I highly recommend watching Spider-Man 2. So from 2004. All right. So next movie, The Dark Knight. I don't know how anybody does not have this movie in their top 5 movies of all time. It could easily be my number 1 movie. I only picked Spider-Man 2 because it's sentimental value. I think it's where I was at the time of my life back then. And also, Spider-Man 2, I'm almost sure. Let me see. Dark Knight came out in 2008. Spider-Man 2 came out in 2004. For me, the whole Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire movies were the resurgence of superhero movies. I know X-Men The original X-Men came out around that time, but it it didn't really hit me until I saw the Spider-Man movies, because huge part of it was they did a lot of CGI Spider-Man swinging through the city, and it was the first movie where it was almost seamless. And there were times where you really couldn't tell if it was CGI or a real person. And the cinematic feel of Spider-Man, especially when he's swinging through the buildings, it was fantastic. I another reason I like Spider-Man 2 more than Spider-Man 1 was the villains were much stronger in Spider-Man 2. Basically Dr. Octopus. Spider-Man 1, you had the Green Goblin and his son. It's kind of it a little bit felt still like Tim Burton's Batman style, especially with a balloon parade that was in Spider-Man 1, Sam Raimi's. So it wasn't perfect to me. Spider-Man 2 was perfect. So, I was on Dark Knight. Sorry, The Dark Knight. Heath Ledger. 2 words: Heath Ledger. You kind of quickly forget that Jack Nicholson was the Joker in the Tim Burton Batmans, and then Heath Ledger comes along, and all of a sudden, okay, now how do you live up to that? I love The Dark Knight because it had so many things going on, and it didn't feel like it was either too much or confused. And it was probably the first superhero movie that felt like this would happen in real life. It felt it was one of the first police procedural type superhero movies. And in the future, Captain America: The Winter Soldier would sort of copy that style, where the focus was not on the superpowers, but it was more on the investigative, trying to figure out outwitting the bad guy. I think we saw the first parts of that in The Dark Knight. The ending kind of got long with Two-Face. If that's why, maybe that's why it's not number one for me, because the ending was okay. They could have kind of trimmed down the ending with Two-Face, but just like the best superhero movies, there's always an iconic chase scene, an action sequence that people remember. And in The Dark Knight, it was the semi versus the Batpod, Batman's motorcycle. And where did the motorcycle come from after the huge crash of the Tumbler, the Batmobile? It's wow. I'm thinking about this movie. All these different scenes in the movie. The celebration scene in Wayne Tower where the Joker crashes the party. Just Batman trying to figure out how to take down a building full of bad guys using his sonar, and then his relationship with Lucius Fox and how well that went together. And then of course you have Michael Caine supporting everything as the stabilizer. Yeah, what can you say about that movie? Plus, oh my goodness, the interrogation scene of Batman versus the Joker. If you watch the movie, I bet you're going to go, oh, you know what? Oh, I forgot about this scene. Oh my goodness. The hospital where the Joker goes crazy, dressed up as, what's her name? Nurse. I want to say Nurse Nancy, but it's no. But whatever his name tag was. I wish if I were a taller, skinnier, lighter skinned guy, I swear to God, the Halloween of that year when The Dark Knight came out, I would have dressed up as the Joker dressed as a nurse. I think that would have been even a better costume than dressed up as the Joker. But there's another scene in The Dark Knight is the mob meeting scene where you first get introduced to the Joker. Man, Jared Leto's got big shoes to fill. Who knows, right? So, all right, let's get on third movie, The Avengers. Again, what can you say about The Avengers? They took basically a near impossible task of making these overpowered, superpowered superheroes that each had their own. They were strong enough to each have their own movie to be the focal point. Basically, you took how many? Iron Man, Captain America, the Hulk, Thor, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. You got 6 superheroes that probably easily 3 or 4 of them could have their own standalone movie. And they did have their own standalone movie. And you cram them into one movie. And then you put in probably, I'd say, Dr. Octopus and Loki, Tom Hiddleston's Loki, are tied for the greatest supervillain in a superhero movie, at least in my opinion. So you have the near impossible task of putting all these superheroes together in one movie with all their introductory action scenes. Remember that, even the way they introduced Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk in India, and Black Widow interrogating a Russian mob guy. Putting all that together and then having this spectacular bad guy, Loki, and having it still feel kind of grounded with all the crazy things going on in this movie. It still felt grounded. The weird thing is I almost felt kind of the parts where they went back to Loki meditating and talking to what's his name? I forgot his name. Josh Brolin's character. I want to say Galactus. No, Thanos. It almost took me out of the realness of the Avengers universe back on Earth. Plus, you got Coulson, freaking Agent Coulson. You throw. Oh my goodness. So, I think is that the one where? Yeah. You had Stark Tower, and Agent Coulson goes up, and Tony Stark and Pepper Potts were having a nice moment alone, and Agent Coulson comes up there to start the whole thing, and then you put Nick Fury in along with them. Are you kidding me? And then they made it work. Whenever it's on TV on one of the cable channels, I DVR it, and I keep it on my DVR for as long as I possibly can. And I don't know how many times I've watched Joss Whedon's The Avengers, dozens now. It's just that's another thing. The watchability factor of this movie is you can just put it on, and you can have young people, little kids in your house, no problem. You can have older people. It's like having ESPN on. Just put it on, put a sport on, and just keep it on in the living room, and it's totally fine. So, The Avengers, number 3. Again, it could easily be number 1 on my list. Actually, let me see. The top 4 on my list could easily be number 1. Going to number 4, it was Captain America, the Winter Soldier. This one felt the most like this was a detective movie. As much as Batman is the ultimate detective, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, actually, it's not. It's a detective political thriller movie. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, which is number 4 on my list. I always talk about All the President's Men, movie from 1974, I think, 1975. Alan Pakula directed it. It had Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman. And, of course, it's funny saying that was Robert Redford back in All the President's Men, which is a newspaper political thriller. It's about the Nixon and the Watergate recordings. Go look it up, kids. it might be a little bit boring for you, but it's one of the best movies ever, in my opinion. At least one of my favorite movies ever. But the Captain America: The Winter Soldier, it felt like one of those old classic '70s movies. That it was like a political thriller, crime thriller, detective movie, like Serpico and what else? A little bit of Dog Day Afternoon, but with a lot of action thrown in. And you have the technology of the CGI and special effects and the big budget money that we have now put into one movie. And the script is fantastic, the acting is fantastic, the realism of it is fantastic. Just the fact that one of the notable scenes in The Winter Soldier was Sam Wilson, the Falcon, recommending to Steve Rogers the soundtrack to Marvin Gaye's Trouble Man soundtrack. And I recommended this on another podcast. Check it out if you have Spotify or whatever music service you have. Check out the album, the soundtrack to Trouble Man by Marvin Gaye. Fantastic. And it perfectly set the tone for Captain America: The Winter Soldier because it harkens back to the 1970s type movie making. I'm actually going to talk about a little bit of that with number 7, X-Men Days of Future Past. That felt the same to me. The 1960s, 70s scenes in X-Men Days of Future Past. But I'm still on number 4, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I'm still recording. I'm at 21 minutes. I'm trying to keep this short because I've had a long day, and I'm not winging it because these movies are so embedded with me as part of my being that I can literally talk to anybody about these for hours. Any of these movies, especially with all 10 of them. So you can, I'm not going to get into the details or specific scenes, but I think that's what my criteria for my favorite movies is. It sticks with you, the stickability. Not just, wow, it wowed me for 2 hours and it was the best, biggest, most blowing up action sequences or explosions or things are flying and breaking and blowing up. No, I want a movie where I can think about it years in the future, appreciate it again and again, and remember scenes from it vividly. Some of the older movies, I'm going to talk about how it affected me because it was a time in my life when the movie came out, and it reminds me of that specific time in my life. So the 4 here, not as much. They're fairly new, except for Spider-Man 2. But it's still fairly new. It's not like from the 90s. All right. So Iron Man, I can tell you though, Iron Man, how they did the CGI armor. That was the first the first movie that I've ever seen where they engineered the hell out of it. Just in terms of how the pieces fit together on his costume, how Tony Stark is as much a scientist as he is a hobbyist, as he is a businessman, as he is a car enthusiast. There's the hardware. I think Iron Man is the hardware movie for superhero movies. And it wasn't like Transformers hardware. Because Transformers, you kind of sort of give up on how things fit in Transformers. You kind of, you trust Michael Bay. Okay, just do what you think and make those sound. And, we'll trust you. And as long as they fight pretty good, okay, we're cool with it. Iron Man, the suits, and the way the Iron Man movie is put together and the way things are where they are in terms of the Stark research facilities and the areas, it feels like everything makes sense. Like if you put a physicist to working on this, the actual suit and all the technology that Tony Stark has to work with, they could probably make a real one. So, and the way they did it in the movie, beautiful. Just I went to a university and I got a degree in industrial design, which is product design, which means we drew a lot of things, products, and we designed a lot of products and how products fit together, are assembled, how they're you deconstructed, you reverse engineered products. And Iron Man was like the geek nerd dream of a superhero slash comic book slash product designer mentality within me. And also it helped that Iron Man, even though people are saying he's a B-level superhero, he's not as popular as like Spider-Man or Batman or Superman. To me, Iron Man was one of my favorites because of the hardware stuff. I love how the machinery, and you know what? They still haven't talked about his stealth costume. I have one of the old issues from the 80s, early 80s. The first time he had his stealth costume. So I'm going off on a little tangent. You guys know how Spider-Man got his black suit, right? All of a sudden, instead of a red and blue Spider-Man, you got the black Venom Spidey. Iron Man also has a all black stealth armor, and he goes total like silence, like a stealth bomber or a stealth fighter, like what is it, F-111 stealth fighter. So he has one of those suits. I don't think they've introduced that in any of the movies yet. So that would be kind of cool if you use that one of these days. So all right, number 5, Iron Man. Number 6, Batman Begins. You know what? Kinda. There's that hardware thing going on again. Probably the most fun with these movies is when you get introduced to the toys, the gadgets, and the man caves. Literally, Batman has a man cave with toys in it. And I love that. It's the tumbler. Does it come in black? And all the guys in the theater just lost it. I was like, there's the Batmobile. He's gonna uncover the Batmobile and he's gonna paint it black. Yes. So Batman Begins, I like. Oh, you know what? I absolutely adored with Batman Begins is his trip to the Himalayan mountains, where he gets trained in the Eastern martial arts. I love how that is a very opposite feel compared to the more technological Western world of Gotham City with all the machines and technology. And because I also I read a lot of Buddhism when I was younger, and I appreciate a lot of what Buddhism has to talk about, promote. It's a philosophy. Seeing that aspect in Batman Begins, how you have to face your fears, not as much that, but the seeing things not as we're used to seeing them. Being able to solve problems by separating ourselves from our egos, or kind of taking a step back, thinking outside the box, as they would say, right? So Batman Begins had that for me, and it's also I keep it in the top 10 because it was the first movie, the Christopher Nolan movie, that really was very, very different. It actually, you know what? Never mind that. It was the first. Oh, I hate. Forgive me, Tim Burton. It was the first really good Batman movie. The first legitimate Batman movie, in my opinion, that has come out. I had fun watching Tim Burton's, Batman, the original with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. And my favorite out of those it was Batman Returns, because you got the bat, the cat, and the penguin, right? That was fine, and okay, we're cool with that. And then Batman Begins comes out, and all of a sudden you got something different. Also, funny, it reminded me. Okay, the container scene, the very first fight scene in Batman, where Batman Begins, where Christian Bale is dressed in the complete Batman outfit, where he goes to the containers where they were shipping illegal drugs or something. If you remember that scene, and then you watch the new Daredevil series, this Daredevil season 1 on Netflix, the season 1, the very first big fight he has is in docks with containers. I think it's just a great setting, and I wonder if they were paying an homage to Batman Begins. And from what I heard, Daredevil is Marvel's answer to Batman back in the day. But Daredevil wanted its own Batman, so they created Daredevil. So, yeah, and I think the same reason I loved both Batman and Daredevil Netflix, or Batman Begins and Daredevil Netflix, is the way they approach being a superhero. A lot of it is practical. A lot of it is you cannot break the laws of physics. So you have to plan ahead. You have to think ahead, and you have to outthink the bad guy. So there you go. That's so many other the freaking Tumblr, the Tumblr scenes. By the way, it's like I think I watched that movie 3 or 4 or 5 times in the movie theaters, and I would always, after like the third time, I think on the fourth time watching it, I decided, I'm gonna go home right after the Tumblr scene. Okay, this is right before the big party at the Wayne Manor before it gets burned down, but it was the big action sequence with the Tumblr, where he rescues Batman rescues what's her name, Dawson's Creek girl from Scarecrow, and when he's driving her back in the Tumblr, and the cops are chasing after him, and they finally get back into the Batcave safe. That's when I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go home now, because like the rest of the movie is like, he fights Ra's al Ghul, and then you got that train wasn't bad, but it was the Tumblr. It's Tumblr, Batmobile, of course, the Batmobile. So that's it. All these reviews are kind of a nutshell, because I'm trying to keep this under an hour. I'm at 33 minutes now, so I'm doing pretty good, I think. I'm going to try to go faster now. So Batman Begins is number 6. Number 7, X-Men Days of Future Past. Now, I read the original comic book back in the early 80s, and so I have another special place in my heart for this specific storyline. It's not verbatim to the original comic series, but it's close enough, and it again had a amazing script. I think, let's see, out of all these movies, no, they're all great scripts. These are not stupid movies. They're not. They're very talky. Just in the right percentages. So, X-Men Days of Future Past, basically, the story is Wolverine has to go into the past to sort of change the past and avoid the catastrophe that's happening in the future. He goes back to the 60s, and when done the way I like it done, I love period pieces like that. Okay, if you guys have seen American Hustle, it totally reminded me of American Hustle back in the 60s. Late 60s, early 70s. You got the wow kind of music sort of thing, right? And the leather everything and the big hair. and the bell bottoms, and kind of it was the golden era for rock and roll music. It was like the late 60s or early 70s was one of the best, the groups. So when Days of Future Past went to that time, it felt comfortable for me. That's all I'm going to talk about that. But in terms of the Pentagon breakout scene with Quicksilver, that would probably be one of the top 10 action sequences, in my opinion, of any superhero movies that have been done so far. Just that scene, if they had like quick fast forward just to watch that scene, I would watch that scene over and over again. It was fantastic. They also introduced the Sentinels. I remember seeing advanced images of the Sentinels for this movie, and my friends and I were going, well, they look like Apple products. The Sentinels, they look too smooth, because the Sentinels from the original X-Men comics were very different looking. They were more clunky, more giant robot type things, and these were smoother. They felt more like a Hammaker Schlemmer toys, the X-Men Days of Future Past Sentinels. But in the end, they worked out. There were great morality messages going on. There were great tolerance messages. Also, actually, let me bring this up. There is a graphic novel by the X-Men back in the early 80s called God Loves, Man Kills. If you haven't read that story yet, go check it out. Now, keep in mind, this story, this comic book, this graphic novel was from 1983. So if it feels like we've heard this speech and this message already in terms of tolerance and acceptance of people who are not like you, keep in mind this is 1983, when there was a whole lot more intolerance in America and the world. And this graphic novel, God Loves, Man Kills, comes out, and it blew me away. And I recommended it to my comic book club, and we read it. And those who accepted it for being a 1983 story really liked it. And I think X-Men Days of Future Past, I think it will have the same effect. The younger kids who are not into as much of the story yet, they want more of the action sequences and all that. I think X-Men Days of Future Past will not work for them as well. But for older people, especially those who grew up in the 70s and 80s, who kind of were still afraid of the Russians, the Cold War, all that stuff, the fear that was going on, the fear, and there's a certain ignorance and an innocence, and it was an era of discovery in almost a scary way back in the 70s. And X-Men Days of Future Past conveyed that. It feels like almost like a dream. So it's one of those. Out of all these movies, probably X-Men Days of Future Past is the movie that I need to sit down and watch it from all the way from the beginning all the way to the end, because the narrative is very important. You can't just jump into a scene. The movie isn't just made up of really cool scenes clumped together into a 2-hour movie. X-Men Days of Future Past is a linear story. It's almost like reading a short story book or a short novel, where some people may not have that kind of patience for it, but it's worth the going through from beginning to end. So X-Men Days of Future Past, my number 7. Number 8, Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, kind of a 180 from X-Men Days of Future Past is Guardians of the Galaxy. It's basically a video game, but Guardians has the scenes where if you can just put a certain scene on your TV and enjoy it for what it is, 15 minutes, and then go do something else, and then come back to it, a couple of days later, and it'll still. It's not like you lost your place in reading this novel. But Guardians, I loved it because it. Bottom line is, it reminded me of Star Wars, and a lot of people have said that same thing. You get a bunch of misfits together, and you put them on a mission to go find something. It's kind of the Dirty Dozen, all these classic stories of the fringe dwellers, the misfits, outcasts, and then they get lumped together almost accidentally, and they go off on an adventure, and they become stronger. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And that's Guardians. And of course, you got the Groot moment, the We Are Groot. You put that in there, and then you put the Rocket Raccoon, funny parts, and then it was the perfect cocktail balance of the different characters and their personalities thrown into a movie. It isn't Avengers, because the Guardians are not super-powered heroes. They would not work in their own standalone movie. Not like Iron Man or Captain America or Thor or the Hulk. Guardians, they need to be a group. They need to be together, and they need to play off one another. It felt fresh. It's hard for me to describe why it felt fresh. I think it's just maybe because we had no idea what to expect. Who the hell are these guys, right? And then for them to introduce us to each of the characters, and then we get invested in them within the first half an hour. I mean, freaking, Dave Bautista as Drax. Who would have thought that you would be rooting for him, and you would absolutely adore him by the time the movie's over? It's kind of hard to do. Well, the huge part is the soundtrack, the songs. The songs, you take the songs out of Guardians of the Galaxy, and you may as well take the soundtrack out of Star Wars. So, Guardians is song-driven. Even James Gunn, the director, said that when he was writing the scenes for the movie, just like he's doing for Guardians 2, he had a specific song in mind while he was writing each specific scene. So it kind of makes sense. And those who know me know I love music. Love music, love music. It would be, if I had like 4 different lifetimes in which to live, I would live one of those lifetimes as purely as a musician. Not making that much money or teaching music. I play keyboards, a little bit of guitar. I was in a garage band when I was in my late teens and early 20s. And if you listen to the previous two podcasts ago, I recorded the Geek parody song. So love the music, and of course Guardians just hit it out of the park with the soundtrack. Actually, that's one of my favorite albums that I like to play in the car when I'm driving. The boom chaka da boom chaka. Is that how it goes? Yeah. Guardians of the Galaxy number 8. Let's see, I'm starting to peter out now. It's late. It's Friday night and getting close to running out of steam, folks. All right, so Guardians is number 8. I'll probably talk about Guardians again. Well, you know what? The Guardians 2 comes out, so I'll probably be talking more about Guardians of the Galaxy 1 before Guardians 2 comes out, and I get to review it. So, number 9, Superman, Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder, 1978. This was the very first superhero movie for me. I was alive back then. I was an old enough young teenager. It came out the year after Star Wars, so I was old enough. And the tagline for this movie was "You will believe a man can fly," and it didn't. Well, I can say it didn't really take that much to entertain us folks back then, because we were not spoiled like we are now with the special effects, and pretty much we can do anything in the world now. We can create a whole different universe with Jungle Book, with Jon Favreau's Jungle Book, and just make it inside a studio with a chroma key and green screen. But back then, people were still doing it. There were no CGI, no computers back then. Everything was practical effects, or you would composite film. You would literally layer film on top of film, or project it against the wall and videotape. Oh, there's no videotape back then. Film on regular film the wall while you were moving stuff around practically. And if you screwed up, you had to re-rack the film and reshoot it, and a 5-second sequence could take you a week to get it right. Not like now with our Photoshop and Adobe Premiere and all the special effects software we have on our computers, where we fixed all that inside our little computer. Back then, you had to fix it right then and there, life-size, real thing. So I'm talking about this because when you first see Superman fly in Superman from 1978, when you see Christopher Reeve take off, actually you first see him when he floats down. At least my memory is when he floats down to meet Lois Lane on the balcony. And you could not see any strings. I know there were strings there, and they knew how to hide it well. Or they manually doctored the film after it was shot. Now there was no computer back then, no computer editing, so they had to do that. And for years we were trying to figure out, how did they do that? How did they do that? And it's like, yeah, no, they did it with pulleys and ropes and strings, but they did it beautifully. And Christopher Reeve, God rest his soul, he to me is still Superman. Out of how many versions of Superman have we gotten so far? And they try really hard, but to me, they still have not captured Superman the way Christopher Reeve captured Superman. I talked about this in the previous podcast, where the Christopher Reeve was kind of an unknown when the Superman came out. And I think he was doing some soap operas, daytime soap operas. But after that, basically he couldn't go anywhere without people recognizing him as Superman. When he made a movie, Somewhere in Time, or whatever other movies he made, he was still Superman. It was, no matter what role he tried to play, he was still Superman to me. And there is a purity in the 1978 Superman that is kind of lost these days. I think these days they try to make a superhero quote unquote 3-dimensional, and it will work for 90+% of the superheroes out there, where it would help if you fleshed out the character more, showed his daily problems, all that. But I think with Superman, because he's Superman. He's about as perfect as you can get, so he's not supposed to make mistakes, and we're supposed to be okay with that. And he's not supposed to have emo moments. I'm not going to mention any movies, Batman versus Superman, but you're supposed to, if you're Superman, you're supposed to represent the best, the ultimate, what everybody aspires to be when they are better than what they could possibly imagine themselves to be. And that's Superman. I think it also represented America. I think it was a perfect time back in 1978 where, especially me, I come from an immigrant family. We came here from the Philippines back in 1974. And to us, America was this golden land where, for the most part, everything was perfect, as good as it can be. Of course, it's not true, but it's an ideal. America is an ideal. And when Superman came out, he is America. When you think about it, he represents the ideals, the lofty goals, the ultimate, the pinnacle of existence. Which in a person that would be Superman, in a country that would be America. And for anybody to make Superman any less than that is a disservice to our own dreams, basically. I mean, you don't watch superhero movies because you want reality, right? Of course not. Especially when you watch a movie named Superman or any movie with Superman in it, I think you will be okay if there's a bit of perfection going on. We expect it from Superman. And so basically, the Christopher Reeve Superman, he could do no wrong. He was tactful. He was appropriate at the right moments. He was kind of clumsy, but still he's got it together, sort of Clark Kent. And even when he's pretending not to have it together, you can tell he has it together. And Lois Lane was also very strong. That was Margot Kidder's Lois Lane. She's not pretty like the current actresses are pretty. The way they make them, MTV Movie Award type, Taylor Swift, Rihanna, Katy Perry pretty. Margot Kidder was an actress first. And she nailed the Lois Lane character. I think it's funny how this movie is almost 40 years old now? And it still had, to me, the best Superman and the best Lois Lane out of all the Superman movies made since then. So that's why if you're a younger person and you've never seen Superman from 1978 and you do wind up watching it, you might get bored because the advancement in superhero movie making since then is light years more advanced than it was when Superman came out. But there's a certain feel to this movie that's timeless. It would be the same as like Star Wars, the original 1977 Star Wars. For all its limitations, it is still a classic because there's a certain a feel to it, a certain ambiance to it. A perfect example is Jaws, the movie with the shark. Steven Spielberg's Jaws. Whole lot of monster movies come out since Jaws from 1975, I think. But Jaws is still the great granddaddy of them all. To me, Superman 1978 is the great granddaddy of all superhero movies, and rightfully so. And when I first made this list at the very beginning, I didn't even think about putting Superman on there, and then somebody mentioned it, and it's, oh, that's right. That's like, yeah, this is the Ty Cobb of Ty Cobb is a baseball player. Chances are, there's a lot of people have never heard of him, but they have heard of Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio, and who else? Lou Gehrig. And then the newer baseball players, people have heard of uh, you know, Ken Griffey Jr. and who was the big players, Nolan Ryan, right, and Cal Ripken Jr. But Ty Cobb was the one that started everything in terms of baseball, in terms of being a scrapper and all. I think I'm getting off topic too much, but that's what I'm saying. It's like you cannot take Ty Cobb out of the discussion of baseball, just like you can't take Superman out of the Superman 1978 out of the discussion of greatest superhero movies of all time. If it weren't for Superman, a whole lot of things would have never been made, I think. The whole flying thing, flying in movies, Superman 1978 pioneered it. How to make things look on the screen without computers and still get away with it, especially flying. So, Superman, number 9. And of course, Mr. Deadpool is number 10. Also groundbreaking, actually, when you think about it. Deadpool is a groundbreaking movie because it broke the fourth wall. It did a Ferris Bueller on us. It's the first superhero movie. Yeah, it is. It's not like it's the first superhero movie that I remember. No, it's the first superhero movie where the dude is talking at you, the audience, and it's making fun of itself, and it is doing preposterous things in such a way where you don't mind. It has the suspension of disbelief, and you don't care because it's so funny. That's another thing. Ant-Man was kind of hinting at funny, but Deadpool is a raunchy stand-up comedy act, an R-rated stand-up comedy act for an hour and a half. Is it an hour and a half or 2 hours? Think of Eddie Murphy's Delirious stand-up comedy act. That's Deadpool, but in a superhero movie. So, if you want my full, long review of Deadpool, check out one of my previous podcasts. I talk about Deadpool in length. But, yeah, I don't know now. It's okay. I'm thinking about when Captain America Civil War comes out in a couple of weeks. And I am forced to make a top 10 list of my favorite superhero movies. Which of these am I going to bump off the list? You know what I'm going to do? I can cheat. You know what I can do? I can cheat and bump off Guardians of the Galaxy because it isn't in the Marvel DC universe mainstream. So there. And it's not as much superhero as it is super beings. I don't know. It's going to be tough. Maybe I'm just going to, I'm going to refuse to make a top 10 list, and I'm going to do a top 11, and Captain America Civil War will be one of these. So, looking forward to it. Thank you for putting up with me again for yet another hour. Hopefully you don't notice the fatigue in my voice. My voice is starting to go now. It's like I didn't even get to take a sip of water. I just kind of wanted to go through this. But, yeah, I can easily talk for hours about these 10 movies plus other movies. I can talk a whole long time about The Crow. Brandon Lee's The Crow. Hellboy. Another great 2 movies. What else? The Incredibles. I know I'm skipping. Watchmen. Oh my God, Watchmen. I was thinking about, should I include them in here? I was like, no, let me stick to mainstream for the most part. And then there's Spawn. That's a groundbreaking movie. It's from a groundbreaking comic book, the Todd McFarlane Spawn. And then even the Punisher, honorable mentions The Punisher with Thomas Jane. Pretty good movie. It wasn't the best. Whole bunch of the Judge Dredd, the newest one with Carl Urban, is actually a underrated movie. Very cool, but or Blade. the Blade movies. Hope it's like I'm gonna go mainstream, so it's easier for me to keep track of this list if I just keep it sort of mainstream. Where Deadpool is the most cutting edge, I guess, out of these. So that's it. If you enjoyed my podcasts, you don't have to give me money, but please consider donating to Making Biscuits Cat Rescue. They are at makingbiscuits.org, and there's different ways that you can donate to them, contribute to them, be a patron. You can give $1 or $2, just a quick PayPal click. If you already have a PayPal account or have a credit card, or do a Amazon Smile. Have them as your charity of choice, and you don't have to do anything in terms of giving your own money. All you have to do is sign up, go to smile.amazon.com, and designate Making Biscuits Cat Rescue as your charity of choice. And all you have to do is, when you order through Amazon, make sure you go to the smile.amazon.com link and shop as you normally would in Amazon. Buy as normally as you would the items. They are not going to be more expensive than what you're used to at Amazon. Whatever the Amazon price is for whatever item you're going to buy, it's going to be the same price, whether or not you are helping out a charity. So might as well help out a charity, right? You don't see any. There's no difference. And a percentage of what Amazon makes from your purchase on Amazon will go to that charity. And if you choose Making Biscuits Cat Rescue, it'll help them. Even if you just order, like, let's say Amazon has that minimum $49.99 for free shipping, but Making Biscuits will get a small percentage of what Amazon makes from that purchase of yours. So, let Amazon donate for you. You're just gonna, you're just clicking, and then, buying your stuff on Amazon. So, and then soon, I keep talking about this, Geek Swag, to geekswag.me. We are testing out new equipment. We are testing out new ways of making T-shirts more efficiently, faster turnaround. We're coming up with new designs. I'm doing a lot of the new designs. Actually, if you go to geekswag.me, you go to our Facebook page. If you go to Facebook and then do a search for geekswag.me, you'll see some of the. We just did a prototype run of the Rey Hope poster, Rey from The Force Awakens, and I designed a poster that looks sort of like the Shepard Fairey's Obama Hope poster from, was it 2012? But I did a Rey version. So you'll see that if you go to Facebook and then do a search for geekswag.me, our Facebook page, and you'll see that. And you see some of the other stuff that we have already for sale, and talking about stuff that we're going to have for sale very soon. So that's it. But that's it for me tonight. My name is Gerardo San Diego. This is The Daily Night. You can find me at thedailynight.net. Is that my place? The Daily Night. It's late, folks. Thedailynight.net. The Daily Night with a K.net. And all the links are there. And that's pretty much it. I'll talk to you probably within a week. I'll have trying to figure out what other topic to talk about. So until next time, may the Force be with you. Thank you very much.